the twilight of my college days, 3 adventurous souls, myself included, decided to embark on a whimsical journey to a nearby beach. Our excitement was palpable as we secured our bus tickets, marking the beginning of what we anticipated to be an unforgettable escapade. In our eagerness to commence preparations, we chose a shortcut on our return, a path that led us through a rather unconventional route, a breach in the graveyard's wall. This decision, taken in a moment of youthful folly, would later come to haunt us in ways we couldn't have foreseen. Our passage through the graveyard, a place of solemn rest, was marked by laughter and light-hearted banter, and ignorance to the sanctity of the space that surrounded us. This graveyard was a mosaic of cultures, with Christian and Muslim burials lying side by side. Yet, in our excitement, we paid little heed to these sacred grounds. However, as we neared the end of this path, a sudden chill enveloped us. We stumbled upon a fresh grave adorned with flowers and surrounded by flickering candles, the final resting place of a young soul of merely 15. The gravity of our disrespect and the somberness of this sight momentarily seized our spirits, and we hastened our steps out of the sacred grounds. The joy of our impending journey momentarily dimmed. Back at the hostel, the day's adventures weighed heavily upon me, and I sought refuge in the embrace of sleep. But as the night deepened, an unsettling presence loomed at the threshold of my room. With the door securely locked, an inexplicable feeling of being watched took hold, rendering me paralyzed with fear. In this moment of vulnerability, I sought solace through a phone call with a friend, whose voice became my beacon through the darkness, guiding me into a restless slumber. Morning revealed a shared unease among us. The previous night's disturbances had not been mine alone. It became chillingly clear that our light-hearted trespass might have drawn more than just memories from the graveyard. The aftermath was a cascade of misfortunes. Plans unraveled, personal losses, academic struggles, and unexpected reprimands, all shadows that seemed to trail our every step. In search of solace, and perhaps redemption, we turned to our faith, frequenting the temple, in hopes of dispelling the shadows that lingered. Whether by divine intervention or the mere passage of time, the cloud of misfortune began to lift, leaving us to ponder the nature of our experience. Was it mere coincidence, or had our actions in the graveyard invited these events? As I reflect upon this chapter of my life, it serves as a poignant reminder of the respect owed to places of rest and the mysterious ways in which our actions resonate beyond the visible, touching the unseen realms that whisper the ancient tales of respect, reverence, and the consequences of forgetting them. Before I unravel this tapestry of the paranormal that has interwoven with my life, let me offer a brief prelude. As a 28-year-old woman residing in a quaint corner of New York, my childhood was singular, shared with my grandmother and step-grandfather. From the earliest memories I can muster, the paranormal seemed to be an ever-present character in the narrative of my life. The first brush with the unexplainable occurred when I was but 3 years old, during a time when my grandmother, hindered by a car accident, had made a temporary bedroom in what we affectionately called the den. Adorned with symbols of faith and icons of pop culture, Jesus and angels mingled with Elvis Presley memorabilia. It was a space of comfort and nostalgia. One night, I sought solace beside her, only to awaken to a terror I could barely comprehend, marked by a handprint on my face and an unseen force that momentarily pinned my grandmother down. Her defiance in the face of this force left a mark on me, as did my newfound aversion to the den. As years unfurled, peculiar happenings dotted my youth. A chandelier swaying without cause, a rocking chair in motion by no visible hand, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps where there should be none. A particularly vivid memory involved a porcelain doll, an angelic figure, mysteriously repositioned in a manner that defied simple explanation, sparking fear in both me and a friend. The teenage years brought their own series of unexplained phenomena, from objects in my room moving without reason to an unsettling sensation of being watched. Attempts to rationalize these occurrences often fell short, leaving more questions than answers. One incident that stands out occurred in the presence of a friend, when the familiar yet inexplicable shaking of my bed served as a rude awakening. My protests to the unseen force eventually led to a cessation of these disturbances, though the memory and the fear of the den lingered. Life progressed, and with adulthood came new challenges and changes. After a significant relationship ended, and I found myself living alone with my son, the paranormal once again made its presence known through sounds and whispers that seemed to seek my attention, leaving me to question the nature of these encounters. Years later, living in a century-old house with my fiancé and our children, the past seemed to echo in new ways. An acquaintance sensed a protective presence in our home, while renovations stirred dormant energies, manifesting in fleeting glimpses and unsettling whispers. Through all these experiences, from childhood encounters to adult confrontations with the unseen, I've navigated a world where the boundary between the physical and paranormal blurs. The questions linger about the connections between these entities, their intentions, and their impact on my life. As I share this journey, I extend an invitation to others to share their experiences, seeking camaraderie in the exploration of the unknown. And so, I ponder, are the spirits that have shaken my world and whispered in the darkness one and the same? This question, among others, continues to haunt my thoughts. Thank you for journeying through this summary of my encounters with the otherworldly, whether driven by curiosity or the shared experience of isolation. I appreciate your company on this spectral voyage. At the tender age of 19, I embarked on a significant life change by moving in with my partner to her ancestral home. This house, steeped in a complex history that predated my arrival, had once been her father's, who had passed away years prior. My partner had lost contact with her mother, leaving the home's legacy a mixture of untold stories and unresolved energies. Rumors hinted at its past life as a police station, though details remained scarce. The initial visit to the house left me unsettled, a sensation I initially dismissed as unfamiliarity, akin to the discomfort one might feel when stepping into a space that doesn't carry the warmth of family or friends. As time passed, my family's disapproval of my partner, justified by reasons not disclosed here, added a layer of tension to an already charged atmosphere. Living in the house, odd noises became a regular backdrop to our daily life, easily brushed off as mere quirks of an old building. However, one night, the peculiar became impossible to ignore. After a quiet evening, The sound of pots and pans moving in the kitchen pierced the stillness, accompanied by the muffled exchange between what seemed to be a man and a woman. Situated in the remote countryside, our nearest neighbors were too far to be the source, and the secure locks on doors and windows dismissed the possibility of an intruder. The footsteps that seemed to ascend the staircase towards us heightened my alarm. In a whisper of fear, I secured our bedroom door, hoping to barricade us from whatever or whoever was stirring in the night. The house fell eerily silent, a silence so profound it felt like a vacuum, amplifying my dread. No sounds of departure were heard, yet by morning there was no evidence of an intruder, only the inexplicable displacement of kitchenware from one side of the room to the other, a silent testament to the night's disturbances. This experience marked the beginning of my encounters with the house's unquiet past, a prelude to a series of events and nightmares that would unfold in time. It was a stark introduction to a chapter of my life where the boundaries between the seen and unseen were blurred, challenging my understanding of reality within those walls. My earliest brush with the inexplicable traces back to when I was about 6 years old, nestled among my most vivid early memories. I was immersed in play within the living room, a space that led into a small corridor. This corridor, starting from the front door, snaked past the living room, staircase, dining room, and culminated at the kitchen. The large windows of the living room offered a clear view of the front doorstep, though we seldom used the front door, preferring the back entrance, which opened to the garden and driveway. On this particular day, my solitude in the living room was punctuated by the sound of the front door creaking open, followed by the familiar clicking of my father's work shoes and the soft thud of his bag hitting the floor. Eager to greet him, I dashed towards the staircase, only to find him ascending with his shoes still on. A clear deviation from his strict rule of no shoes beyond the kitchen. My attempts to catch his attention were futile. It was as though I was invisible to him, confused and slightly hurt by his indifference. I followed him upstairs to my parents' bedroom, only to be met with the door slamming shut in my face. When I recounted the incident to my mother, insisting that my father was indeed home, she calmly informed me that he was still at work. A thorough check of their bedroom revealed no sign of him, leading my mother to conclude I needed rest. 2 years later, a similar experience unfolded, this time involving my uncle who was staying with us. Despite seeing his car pull up and attempting to greet him, my brother and I were met with the same silent treatment. It wasn't until my mother and a tearful encounter with my brother later that the eerie pattern of these visitations became undeniable, even to her. The most chilling incident occurred when I was 12. Expecting my father and grandparents, we were met instead by an apparition resembling my grandmother. She ignored our greetings, walking straight through us as if we weren't there. The entity attempted to isolate itself by slamming doors, which I persistently prevented. The encounter escalated when the apparition, in distress, attacked my mother before vanishing. This harrowing experience finally convinced my mother of the strange phenomena enveloping our home. Since then, our approach to these uninvited visitors has been cautious, always keeping a safe distance. A year has passed since my mother accepted the reality of these occurrences. leaving us with more questions than answers about the nature of our unwelcome guests. The house seems to be a nexus for events that defy logical explanation, each encounter a thread in a broader tapestry of the unexplained that continues to unfold. Let me share a bit of context to set the stage for this tale. My wife, whom I'll refer to as R, has been shadowed by an unseen entity ever since she left offerings at a crumbling gravestone in her childhood. This gravestone was so eroded that it bore no name or identifying marks. This entity has manifested violently towards every woman who has shared a room with R, leaving visible scars, including on her own mother. It also tormented her sister and her ex-husband psychologically, contributing to strains that may have led to their divorce. The entity lapses into dormancy, but its periods of activity are marked by intense disturbances for R, including surreal experiences she describes metaphorically as being called into the back rooms for tea, despite not being a drinker. The entity's presence seems to intensify with attention. In contrast, a friend of ours, N, has been accompanied since childhood by a benign spirit, a protective presence, resembling a child that has offered them comfort and safety. Now, to the heart of the story. As someone sensitive to spiritual energies, I've always been attuned to the presence of such entities. So, during a game night that brought us together, I immediately sensed an unsettling atmosphere. This was the day R's thing showed signs of activity, and N mentioned they had brought along their spirit companion. Unfortunately, R's entity does not tolerate other spirits. The atmosphere became suffocating with negative energy, disrupting our focus and unnerving everyone present. Friends who arrived later also remarked on the palpable tension, akin to the suspenseful lull in a horror movie soundtrack, where the silence stretches taut, foreshadowing imminent horror. The epicenter of this fear emanated from our tiny laundry room, while a hostile presence hovered over R. It seemed as though a silent battle ensued between the entities, with N's spirit attempting to find refuge from R's aggressive follower. The confrontation escalated until N's spirit was compelled to retreat outdoors. However, R's malevolent follower then turned its attention to our 5-year-old daughter, who reacted with terror. Her fear was palpable. She trembled and resisted entering her bedroom, where the entity had manifested. In response, I took immediate action, conducting a thorough cleansing of the room to safeguard our daughter from this malevolent force. The process was arduous, necessitating the removal of bystanders, but ultimately, the room was purified, allowing our daughter to sleep in peace. Since that night, we've encountered no further disturbances from R's entity. I've fortified our home with protection jars, hoping to permanently ward off this unwelcome presence.